All right, yo, it's your boy Yoshi Kid Neo, and we are back in another edition of DM Diaries. This is going to be parts 4 and 5 at the same time, mainly because I forgot to do part 4 last week. And it's not that I forgot, I've just been working on a lot of stuff for my campaign, and I ended up the day that I was going to. I usually do Mondays for recording the DM Diaries. Obviously, today's Tuesday. But the last 2 Mondays I've been busy with essentially making my D&D server, which I'm kind of going to showcase a little bit, and possibly if anyone needs the help in getting it set up, I could hopefully maybe help with doing that, or at least show you an easy way of doing it. I've also been working on a lot of the assets that I want for the campaign. Now that I've got a server running, especially with Foundry, because I'm self-hosting, I don't like to have my main computer on all the time, mainly because of the fact that it is a power consumer, and I know this. So having that run 24/7 would probably, make my power bill substantially higher. But using a Raspberry Pi, because of how little power consumption that has, and the fact that it can be on 24/7, it's just very effective for me. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get in. Let me show you what I've been working on. This is the new landing page for the campaign, which I will link the assets that I've used. I got them from a Redditor, which, I actually, on the Foundry homepage, the Foundry hub, there's a Foundry hub. Let me show you this. So the Foundry hub here, this is a website where these guys are essentially making a wiki instead of just a Reddit for Foundry. And there's a lot of guides. There's a lot of the modules are all there, everything. This build an interactive landing page right here. This is where I literally pretty much ripped this scene that this guy has made, and he was nice enough in the, let's see, I think there's a link on here to the Reddit page. No, it doesn't look like it, but you can grab the dudes, like somewhere in here. There it is. So if we were to go look up this guy on Reddit real quick, we would be able to find the actual form that he used. There he is. Let's look at his posts. And he's actually been making a lot of stuff. There it is, current landing page. So in here, he made the blank version, the blank template that I ended up grabbing. He posted a lot of the assets for this on that Reddit. So I'll actually keep this, and I'll make sure to put it into the channel's description on whatever platform you're watching this from, so that you can do that. So I took his assets. I'm currently using them. I plan to go in and change a little bit of it. Probably like the candle and the gem or the gold coins and stuff like that. I really like the map and the masks that it brings with it. The parchment, I'm probably going to use this to show current like allies and enemies, or things like that. Important NPCs. The quest log right here, I'm going to see if there's a way that whatever's written in here, it can just be plopped onto one of the pages instead of it just saying click for quest log. But if you essentially read through, this isn't a guide per se, but it's enough of a building block to where you should be able to use these macros in order, and use these modules in order to get the map to function as it is. So the Raspberry Pi, now that I've got this working 24/7, essentially I've made a domain name. I've made a website that my players are able to utilize in order to get to my game, even if I'm not there. My computer doesn't need to be on. All this Foundry is running from my Raspberry Pi now. I've got a share drive that I've got on there that I'm able to put all my assets. It's really cool. So in the middle of the week, if they wanted to come in here, they'd be able to do some more things. They can click on their, like if we go to Agent J, you can click on his little picture. It opens up the character sheet. And this is all thanks to the Trigger Happy module. If you click on the world map, it'll pop them over to the world map so they can see it. It is currently still a work in progress. They can click back to the landing page, they can click to see the political one, and they can open up the quest log to see the current quests that they have. So there's a lot of cool functionality in these modules and in this asset that I got from that Redditor. So very appreciative of him and his work. And I do plan on modifying this to fit my own needs and my own aesthetic. I've built a landing page in the past before, but it was very like static. I want to have more, I guess, flair, more things going on with it that my players can actually interact with. Maybe eventually I'll put some type of like hidden gems or something like that to where if they find it, maybe the players get something cool. I don't know. I've got ideas. Not sure how I'm going to implement them, but we'll figure it out as we go. So, the last two sessions, the session 4 was called Minefield, and session 5 was titled The First Winter's Festival. So we'll start with session 4. The party, oh, there's that again. I don't know where that's coming from, but the party were essentially finishing up having a nice, pleasant conversation with an NPC that they had met. Here he is now. So they started the session after talking to this gentleman, Hulrock Hillheart, a dwarf from the Mithril-born clan, like empire up there in the north. If we go to the world map, we can actually, so the Mithril-born clan, they are primarily in this area. Party, I don't think is any dwarves. They don't have really any business to be in the icy areas yet. So more than likely they don't know the exact location yet. I've had them roll history checks and stuff to see. Elves are over here. Haven't decided who's here. These are like the merchant kingdoms. Haven't decided who is here. And then this is the human kingdom. And then I'm pretty sure I've got some cities that I'm going to have inside of here. I just don't have the whole world, at least the whole change of the world planned yet. A lot of the stuff from the last campaigns I do not necessarily recycle, but I bring it along for the ride through the timeline. So the party started roughly around this area. They headed up north a little bit, following the river until they were able to cross the road or cross a bridge that was created. It wasn't an actual like wooden bridge or anything, not a stone bridge. It was just a makeshift dirt bridge that was created that the bandits had essentially made a dam that allowed the water to part, and they essentially made these sort of they made these sort of like makeshift tunnels to allow the water to continue to flow at the pace that it was, but also for their carts to be able to make it from one end to the other. So this ended up being a check that the party had to make in order to get by, and they actually did it very well. The fun part about this whole thing was like, I think it took them like no time at all to get across. I was hoping maybe they would try to do something, and if the check was going to go bad, which it didn't, I had a plan that as they were trying to go, the dirt crumbled beneath and started to take the cart, so they had to essentially evacuate and then go on foot from there. But luckily they made their check, so they were fine. They continued through to, let's see, I used this map. They continued through until they got to this point. So on this map, we had a couple things going on. So the party started up here in the top portion, and as you can see, there were these bandits down here. So up to this point, on their whole journey through the forest, there have been dead animals that were recently killed within the last maybe 5 days or so, and just their bodies tossed and littered all throughout the forest. No sign of utilizing the bodies for, you know, either resources or whatever. It was just essentially a slaughter of all these forest animals and then littering the bodies throughout the forest. The party, I believe, had a thought that this might be some type of like cult ritual thing that's happening. They were not sure exactly what was going to happen whatsoever. So they were hoping that maybe they would catch up, because they noticed as they were going, the bodies were getting fresher and fresher, which brought them to this location about a day and a half outside of Grim Meadow, which was their ultimate location, or destination rather. So they start up here, and what I did with this map was, if we go and look at all the sound files, I made a bunch of ambient noises and I made them into a certain radius. And all these ambient noises, there's 3 different sound files that go off depending on which one of these. I just copy and pasted everything. But essentially, if a token moves into the radius, it blows up. It's a sound file of an explosion. Let me see if I can get this to happen. I think I just have to move forward. Did you hear that? Explosion. Yeah. So the party, my thought process was, as the party was going through, they first got here, and I had, since they didn't go and try to be quiet, which actually was the key to initiating this thing safely, they saw, as they came here, they saw these 2 bandits with a cart full of these creatures, these dead creatures, and they saw them heaving and hoeing them and throwing them off the cart and spreading them out throughout the field. So the party wanted to approach them and essentially get them to stop doing what they were doing, yada yada yada. They were making noise, enough noise to where these guys heard them, and they told them to stop where they were, otherwise they would face the consequences. So that was meant to be an actual warning, but to be perceived as a threat. I wanted the party to be like, oh, and what are you guys going to do? And then continue moving on. But I believe the players are a little more level-headed this time around. I believe that they are not afraid of these guys. So they're like, all right, what really could they do if we do stop here and just kind of expose ourselves? So they stopped their cart and listened to what they had to say, which was the key to unlocking this encounter in a sort of different venue. Had they just continued, as you can see, a lot of these are the remnants of a minefield, because they had a very clever way of, you know, taking out the mines, which I did intend for them to do. And we'll get into the consequences of what that was. So they use their mage hands and find familiars to essentially take rocks and just toss them all around the field. Because what was revealed to them, and what I should have changed probably, is how much pressure. About to sneeze, I apologize. What I should have changed is how much pressure it would have taken for these mines. And unless they dropped the rock dead set on the middle of the mine, it wouldn't have exploded. That probably would have been a better solution, just because if you're in an actual minefield, the radius around the mine isn't much the problem as it is where the mine is, and maybe like a foot, at least my understanding of how mines work. So the bandits gave them a deal. They could take one of 3 options. First option is they could pay them 500 gold, and one of them would come and join them and lead them through the minefield, which in this sense, the mine actually is an acronym for mini incendiary, no more explosion. I think I honestly forget what I called it, but it's in my notes somewhere, but I'll look at it later. Anyway, so they explained that if they touch these things and set them off, they'll explode, and it'll be worse than a fireball ever could be. So the party's like, okay, that's pretty bad. We don't want to get involved in that. So they started tossing rocks, which triggered them. And like I said, if I could redo it again, I would make it to where they'd literally have to like pick what corner. And they wouldn't know that it's a corner on the grid. They would just have to use the ping app. And if they're within, like if they get somewhere within the middle of the square, like I don't want it to be, whoops, let me get rid of that. They get it to where it's like somewhere within the middle of the square. I guess maybe that would do. Then it would explode and trigger. Otherwise, what they were doing, most of their things, like they do this, and I'm like, all right, cool, this one explodes. So that would be something I would do different. That would make them think, after the first couple, they're like, all right, these guys are full of shit. They'd continue. They'd end up triggering that mine and be like, okay, these guys aren't full of shit. But option 2 was that they would give them half of a map for 250 gold. This half of the map would send them on a backtrack to find the other piece of the map, put it together, and they could navigate through the minefield with no issue. Very detailed map. The third option is to take their chance and good luck. So they were thinking about it, and Cassiel, Joe's character, was fully willing to give them the gold to get moving along, because gold is not something that he personally is trying to achieve. That's not why he's doing this. Gold is a means to an end for Cassiel. So he's fine with, this is a means to an end. Let me just give it to these guys. They could probably utilize it better than I can anyway. But the rest of the party's like, nah, we don't need to do that. We can navigate this thing ourselves. So they started dropping rocks, but because of the fact that essentially tossing a rock is an action, I believe. Maybe it's an improvised action, but regardless, it takes, the 6 second, like it takes a turn, they can throw a rock, and unless they use their action to toss another or something like that, they can't do another, which they were essentially doing. So they get 2 rocks every action or every turn for the 5 of them, and they were noticing that there are a lot of these mines around the field. And after they had gotten to this point in exploding, they realized how long it was going to take. And from what these bandits had told them, that it was roughly a mile's worth of minefield. And it was about a mile a mile diameter from this location that the mines were set. But they also had put some lingerers out there just to avoid them trying to go all the way around, because they also revealed that their main goal was to slow the party down for a little bit, which they achieved. So as they started to blow these mines up, the bandits started to freak out, and they're like, all right, you guys are coming after us. We know this minefield really well. You guys, good luck. Peace. We're out of here. So they start booking it, and they start zigzagging through this minefield to get away. So I believe Lloyd used he's got Frederick, which is his summoned familiar, and he's got his birthday gift was a ring of spell storing. His ring of spell storing currently had, I think, sleep and polymorph in it. So he had Frederick use polymorph on himself, cast polymorph on himself, and turn into a giant owl and start to chase these guys down so he could pick one up. As the giant owl got closer, the moment it got into range, these 2 bandits pulled out their crossbows, took aim, and fired. And because of the fact that they are able to run 30 feet and the owl can do the dash action in order to get to them, based on the range of the crossbow, they had X amount of attacks before the owl got there. So I just told Lloyd that this is what's happening, and he said that Frederick was going to continue moving to go and grab them. So I rolled all their attacks. They ended up, I think half of them hit, but it was half was enough with the damage to get rid of the owl form. So the giant owl goes away, and now Frederick remains, and then they end up shooting Frederick because they're like, this guy's still coming after us, and Frederick's now no more. So at this point, I believe it was Cassiel cast Fly on himself, and Dr. Thorpe I believe it was Dr. Thorpe. And they flew and came to the bandits. And when the bandits saw that they were coming, you know, they see these guys, they know what they are capable of. And they're like, all right, fine, we give up, whatever, you know, do what you're going to do. But and Cassiel's like, dude, we were trying to pay you. And the bandits are like, yeah, you might have been, but the rest of your party were threatening us. They were making very hostile remarks. We don't trust you guys, especially because we know what you're capable of and we know what you've already done. You've already killed 2 of our guys for nothing other than the fact that they were bandits, which is literally what happened. They were drunk. They were not causing any harm, but because they had an intent to possibly do wrongdoing, the party slaughtered them. But at the time, the party didn't also know that these bandits are essentially being withheld. They might be brainwashed in some way, shape, or form by the boss, which, as of right now, is Lord Saxon Carlisle. Perhaps. I don't know. Perhaps. So they get these bandits back. They pay them 500 gold, and they bring them back to this cart. And the bandits are like, well, we did what we needed to do, so we don't have to litter these corpses anymore. I will take what I have left, and I will dispose of them properly. The rest will end up being eaten by the creatures of the forest, more than likely, or just decay, and maybe some beautiful flowers or bushes or something like that will pop up and sprout. You know, it's whatever. So at this point, one of them, Lenny, I believe is what I named him. Lenny, the bandit, joins the party and starts taking them on the trek to get through the minefield. During this time, the party talks with Lenny about everything that's going on, and Lenny does everything he can to defend the boss, to defend the boss's business, and defend the rest of the bandits, and what they're doing is not evil or wrong. And this is, I think, where the party get their conception of, okay, these guys are definitely brainwashed. There's no chance that they are not brainwashed. So now they know the bandits are fine. It's Lord Carlisle that we need to be worried about. If we take care of him, then we should be able to save the bandits and save the area or the region, whichever you want to call it. So the party make it through this. We head back to the world map now. They're across the river, they're across the minefield, and they've got about a day and a half's journey from where they started in order to get to Grim Meadow. The other encounter that was here was a couple of owl bears that were essentially had just killed a creature that came to look at these, you know, corpses that were littered about. So they killed a creature that was feasting on them, and they were about to enjoy a feast themselves. But they squared up to the party and were like ready to defend their food. Now, this encounter was intended mainly to see if they were not necessarily murder hobos, but to see how they would react to the creatures of the region. Are they going to just start slaughtering things that get in their way, regardless of what it is? Or are they going to try to think it through and find an alternative? And the party went with the alternative route. They used a spell, I think Greater Image from Cassiel, to essentially conjure up a ancient red dragon or an adult red dragon and essentially fly towards these owl bears, which they see something bigger than them, they're going to get the fuck out of there. So that's exactly what they did. They split up, they ran, they looked for cover. The dragon just, was, roaring and growling and shooting off fire and flapping its wings and all this, dragon shit. And it scared off the owl bears, and the party were able to move on without harming them. So now that gives me an idea that the party definitely doesn't want to just kill everything in their path, which is good. That means I can throw some more lighthearted things at them, and I don't have to worry about either an NPC or a cute little critter like the Foxen. I gotta change that. I keep forgetting. I think it's this. Alt 1. Okay. I keep forgetting that now that I'm running Foundry in a browser, my Alt E is an actual shortcut for Brave. So I had to change my little quick index thing to Alt 1. So the Foxen, which I've noticed for some reason, every time I do it the first time, it doesn't pop up. It doesn't pop up my creatures, which is really weird. Let me do this a couple times and see if it'll pop up. Maybe not. Alright, so there's the griffin that they fought. That pops up. That's weird. It might be a setting thing that I've got to go and change. But now the griffin's not even popping up, which is also strange. So, regardless, anyway, that's an encounter for another day. But we're going to bring it back. I did it in the very first campaign that I ran. The one with Nagex, the Necromancer. And it was very fun. Only one Foxen was killed in that video. All the others survived and ended up getting out. Oh, that's tight. I didn't know that they did that. Neat. Yeah, it's still not popping up, so we'll figure it out. I'll get it figured out before tomorrow. So anyway, now I know the party's not just going to mindlessly kill everything in their path. So they continue on their route, and by this time we were nearing the end of the session, so I just had them do some roleplay before getting to Grim Meadow. Once they got to Grim Meadow, it was roughly, I think it was like 7 something, and they were on the hill that was about to descend into the location that they were going to be witnessing this party, or this festival, or a slaughter. Who knows? They had no clue what was going to happen. But on the ridge, they were able to see a plume of white smoke in the center of the town. And based on their perceptions, they were able to discern that this isn't like fire burning from like a raid or destruction of the town. This is a fire from some sort of cooking, and that's all they know. So the next session, the First Winter's Festival, Part 5, they get to the edge of the city where they are essentially waved down by a couple of the bandits, and they say they've been expecting the party, that they've arrived just in time, they're about to get introduced to the people of Grim Meadow, and that they'll take their cart, they'll park it, they'll make sure the horses are fed, they're given water, and they're able to rest. And they point the party in the direction they need to go. Party don't say any ifs, ands, or buts, and they head on in. And at this point, the mayor, whose name is Raoul. Mayor, Thurian, Grim Meadow. So we got Raoul here. He is talking about the history of the town during this last year, because the trade season is officially to a close the moment the First Winter's Festival happens. And the reason that is because typically, historically, after about a 10-day from this point in time, the first snowfall hits, and the first snowfall in this region is the worst. And that's what the party's kind of heard so far, mainly from the bandits, the folks in Grim Meadow, as well as the folks in Burkton down here where our campaign began. So Raoul introduces Lord Saxon, who's there, calls him the reason that they've been able to essentially bounce back from the hardships of the last year or so. And Lord Saxon goes on to essentially continue to make his image look perfect for these people. He promises them the bandits to be ended. He promises them new inns and new, I guess, traders from around the road. Or around the world, rather. He promises new luxury items to be exported from the capital and make their way through here that he has endorsed himself. So the city, the town they love it. They love Lord Carlisle. He's been very helpful. He's using his wealth to make this town essentially grow very steadily, because traders want to come here. Traders want to see, or this is like a central point. This is literally the middle of this region. So all the traders that come from the Empire end up making their way through here. This is a midpoint. All the traders that come from these regions, they have to essentially follow these roads, at least to be on the safest route, and they'll eventually get to this location. Burkton is a smaller location because not a lot of folks, you know, come from these locations down to Burkton unless they're a trader. So this is like the spot where a lot of the trade and interaction and exchanging of goods happens. So the people love Lord Carlisle. He introduces the party as the saviors of the region and ending the bandits' reign of terror. And the party come up. They don't introduce themselves. They just kind of smile and wave. And then the meat pies begin to make their way from the cook's kitchen to the tables. And they smell delicious. They smell wonderful. This is the best food that anybody in this town has ever eaten, except for Lord Carlisle, because he's a noble. And possibly the best food that the party has ever had, aside from maybe Trina. Trina, because of the fact that her backstory is entangled heavily with a god, or 3 of them actually. She's probably eaten some really, really good food, especially after a great successful mission or something like that. But that doesn't really matter. So the party had their own special table. It's only like 10 feet away from Lord Carlisle. And they all begin to eat. And the party's looking at these meat pies going, okay. So Lord Carlisle said he was going to make these meat pies out of people and frame this town to be cannibals and make this place all go up in flames from the Empire themselves. So they start to dissect their pies. They start to take them apart, look at the food inside, or the ingredients rather, and discern what it is they see. Now, Dr. Thorpe is a cook, so he was able to discern real quickly that they're just regular meat pies. There's some braised pork in here. There's some beef. You know, there's some high quality ingredients. But Cassiel, as he's looking, because the rest of the party didn't, I don't think they were even going to entertain the idea of eating these pies. So they didn't really look. But Cassiel looks in his and he finds an index finger. Wow. So he flips out. He's like, I'm going to be sick. He takes the index finger out. He stands up, he throws it at Giles, and he's like, look at that. And he goes behind one of the cottages nearby to retch. He starts to throw up, but this is all just a cover-up. He ended up pulling me, or I pulled him in a private chat because he was like, this is what I want to do, but I don't want the party to know. And he did really well in this, and Gerald actually played off of this really well. The rest of the party, you could argue that they know how strong they are at this point. So a griffin, especially the normal griffin, I'm pretty sure is only like a CR. Here's the normal griffin. It's a CR2. I mean, they're strong. I don't think it's something that you definitely scoff at when you look at it. But with the 3 of them, they're probably, you know, the other 3 party members, they're probably looking at this thing when he uses his major image again. And they're like, whatever. We can kill that thing if we need to. Doesn't look that bad. So major image comes out and Cassiel comes about and he's like, oh my God, there's a griffin here. Everybody run. He's essentially trying to clear the audience. He doesn't want anybody to get hurt if they don't have to be. He doesn't care if there's witnesses or not, but he just doesn't want people to be in the vicinity when he attacks Lord Carlisle. So the griffin comes out. Literally all the townsfolk freak out because the griffin has been known in these regions to attack and be very ferocious, especially towards these common folk. Probably one attack from the griffin, and not even the whole multi-attack, just one swipe would kill the commoner because they've got like 4 HP. But the rest of the party, besides Agent J joins in them because he's, you know, from Earth. He's from our planet. And he sees this monster and he's like, yo, fuck that. I'm out. So he starts running, which is hilarious. But the rest of the party kind of just sit there and look at it and they're like, whatever. But I think this slightly upset Joe because he wanted more of a reaction maybe. Or he just felt And I kind of felt that maybe the rest of the party were kind of metagaming a little bit, that a griffin all of a sudden shows up the moment Castiel walks away. So they had it in their minds, all right, Castiel's doing something, because he wouldn't pull the DM aside if he wasn't up to something. So that might be, you know, there's a little disconnect there, but it's not something that was really going to change much of the outcome of what happens next. The griffin comes through. Castiel pops his Radiant Soul ability, which turns him into his angelic form. He pops his Unleashed Sword ability, which makes it to where he crits and does extra damage. He crits easier, I should say. And he points it down at Lord Saxon, and he's like, your reign of terror is over here. Like, I'm sick of your shit. You are feeding people to these townsfolk that did nothing to you. And Lord Carlisle's just sitting there like, first of all, let's get one thing straight. That's a fake-ass griffin, and I'll prove it. He grabs a roll, he throws it at the griffin, which was currently sitting on top of the one of the cottages. And because he's got a high dex stat, you know, no need to roll against an imaginary illusion that's right there in his face. I just had him throw it, and it passed right through. So people are kind of like, what? How did that happen? And then he starts to ignore Castiel and start to talk and plead with the townsfolk that it's merely a joke. There's nothing to be afraid of. Let's get back together and begin to eat our pies. But Castiel's not having it. He's like, no, you're feeding them people. I had a finger in my pie. Like, you're feeding people. He's like, no, we did not feed them people. That was one of the cooks that mistakenly chopped up his finger because he was preparing a lot of food. And one of the bandit chefs came over and had a bloodied rag on the little stump of his finger. And he's like, yeah, sorry about that. I thought I got rid of that one. Whoops. Castiel's like, no, that's a cover up. I'm not having it. You're done. And he casts the darkness spell, which puts a globe of darkness around Lord Saxon. And he goes in there because he's got Devil's Sight. He's able to unleash his attacks on Lord Saxon. Lord Saxon takes all of them. But the thing is, Castiel was expecting to have advantage. He didn't have advantage because Lord Saxon could see him perfectly fine. But Castiel didn't know this when he went in to do this. So Lord Saxon now is known to not be affected by the darkness spell, which means it could mean a multiple groupings of things. I don't know what the players are thinking. More than likely, though, they see Lord Saxon as being, he's a spellcaster for one. He's got a high dex stat, so they know that he's pretty quick. He's decently hard to hit. He's got these spells, and now that they know that he can see in darkness, especially magical darkness, might lead to what class he is. I don't know what. Anyway, he does his attacks, and Lord Saxon stands up and starts to walk away. He gets an opportunity attack, and Lord Saxon doesn't care. He turns around and looks at him and casts a spell, Dominate Monster, which Castiel, I think, rolled really poorly on his wisdom save and actually became dominated and charmed by Lord Saxon. And at this moment, Lord Saxon calmly was like, please return to your seat, end your facade, and the whole thing, apologize to the townsfolk, continue to eat your pie, and let us have an enjoyable festival. Which Castiel, being charmed, will do anything Lord Saxon says as long as it doesn't harm himself. And I think there's some other stipulations, but I didn't cross those boundaries, so it didn't matter. Lord Saxon just wanted Castiel to comply. He saw that the rest of the party was perfectly fine with what was going on, which in turn will lead us to why Castiel got upset when the spell ended. Lord Castiel gets everybody to start coming back out. Castiel apologizes to everybody, sits down, starts to eat his food. Trina, seeing him just start to gobble down the food, tries to smack it all out of his hands. I had them roll contested acrobatics checks, and the first one failed on her part, so he ate the finger, which was hilarious. I didn't expect him to eat the finger because he was just told to eat the pie, but Joe wanted to eat the finger, so he did. He then wasn't able to eat the rest of the pie before Lord Saxon got up and sent a message to the party saying, hey, meet me in the back. We have much to discuss in private. And he gets up, he leaves as the townsfolk are starting to come out and get a little bit, you know, reorientated to everything going on. So as Lord Saxon leaves, the party meets him behind a cottage, and he is greeted by these these heavily armored gentlemen. They're known as bastions from the source book that I got them from, and they are there guarding Lord Saxon, is essentially from being just outright attacked by all of the party right here in private, even though it's like pseudo privacy. Obviously they're still right next to the festival, so if anything breaks out, everyone will hear it, and who knows what'll happen. So he tells them that on his journey here, he just had a change of heart. He decided that one of his men's lives isn't worth an entire town. Instead, one of his men's lives is worth one of the party's lives. And he's been thinking about either Agent J, who actually did the attack, Trina, who caused the horrific scene to even be a possibility, or Cassiel, whose bright idea it was to come and ruin his business in the first place. Which Cassiel was like, you can harm me, I don't care, as long as it brings me closer to destroying you. And he's like, fine, I will hurt you, or perhaps maybe someone you love, and that should be compensation enough for what you've taken away from me. So now, at this point, Joe's like, fuck, now I gotta make backstory characters that Brady can take away. So he then says that he wants to go ahead and continue playing this game with the party. He will act as the informant, because the informant never showed, because the party went back on their deal. So he gives them the information of everything that they're looking for is in a harbor town called Bleakbell, which is, if they follow the road all the way up to the Empire, they can either take a boat to get there, or they can go across the plains to get there. Either one will work. The boat will be faster. So he tells them that Bleakbell is their next destination if they're going to continue on the route that they currently are on. And then he says that the festivities are just beginning. I hope you enjoy what I have in store for you. And until I see you in either the capital or in Bleakbell, farewell. He then leaves, the bastions following him, keeping an eye on the party to make sure they don't try anything. And that's when they hear an actual griffin. This griffin is a stronger version of the griffin. It's not actually, it's a homebrew griffin. It's actually a CR6. So a little bit, you know, more macho than the CR2 griffin. But the party's all level 8 and there's 5 of them. I knew 100% that this griffin would not survive too long. I wanted it to go in, show off a little bit of what the griffin can do, just so that the party kind of has it in their head of, okay, this thing has a screech that it can do, it's got a multi-attack that's pretty brutal, and it can fly around really rapidly, so it's got mobility as well. So now they know essentially what's going to happen later, because they discerned, especially after Raoul came out, once they had killed the griffin, this griffin was smaller than they had remembered. And the last time they saw the griffin was like maybe a year and a half or so ago. And in the griffin they remember was a lot bigger, a lot stronger, and a lot meaner. This griffin doesn't compare to that, which means that either A, in its docile state over the last year and a half, it hasn't, you know, it's lost that ferocity, or from what Joe pointed out, we just killed its baby. Wonder what's going to happen next session. So next session, I actually don't know exactly what the party's going to do, because as the party were invited into Raoul's house, Raoul had told them, you guys can have my house as your like base of operations for the night until you leave. I will find another place to stay. It's no harm at all. If you need anything, let me know. and we will make sure to accommodate. Thank you for saving our town from that beast. He left the party alone, and at this point, Cassiel started to go off on the party. He's like, all right, why did all of you just watch me attack Lord Saxon? Why did none of you back me up? Not a single one of you helped me out. I was over there attacking, and they're all like, well, we didn't know what you were going to do. He's like, no, I made it perfectly clear with all the stuff that I was throwing at Lord Saxon what my intent was. Like, well, we kind of wanted to see what would happen. And he's like, no, that's not an excuse. This guy is pure evil. Why don't y'all see that? And most of the party responses, I believe, was pretty unanimous in, well, we want to see what information he has for us. Obviously, he knows something about what it is we want. We need to know more before we can just take him out. Because Cassiel, all the party members essentially got like a mini quest that they have to do, or that I gave them to essentially give them a reason to be in this area. Cassiel's was more broad, and it's based on his backstory of he's trying to find his own path to, I guess, a righteous glory, to be accepted into whatever heaven it is that Uriel, the angel, the celestial that he chose to be. I don't think his patron is right to say, but who gave him the vision once he became, or once his Aasimar blood essentially manifested. So he's trying to figure out what will lead me to that path. What will get me there to this holy place that I want to be at? And so far, all he's really got to go on is, okay, I can destroy these bandits and capture them and try to reform them. But now he's got, all right, I need to defeat Lord Saxon because he's evil in my eyes. I'm 100% certain he's evil. So his goal right now is to get rid of him ASAP. But the party wants to see what else he can help them with. And that definitely clashes. That clashes. You can't, that's a lawful good character. I think he's lawful. Anyway, a good character with the neutral aspects, it doesn't work. There's a black and a white in Cassiel's eyes, and currently the party's trying to make it more gray, which he doesn't agree with. So they ended on a very, very heated argument, mainly between Lloyd and between Cassiel. Which luckily my players are, they understand that this is all in character. It's not to be taken out of the game. It's not Joe lashing out at Jeffrey. I've had that issue once where one character joked about something in character. The other player took it out of character personally, and then that shut that character down for a while. And even after it was brought up and I tried to remedy it, there was still this like lingering effect from it, and it just kind of ruined that group. So I made sure I clarified after. I was like, hey, I love the role play. I love the party conflict. If this gets too much for anybody, you say something either to me or to the person. I think everyone can come to an agreement of, okay, I'll back off a bit. That was just character. I'm not mad at you as a person. So we had that discussion already at the end of the session, just to make sure everyone was on the same page. But we already have our inner party conflict, and this is going to definitely test the characters in the future as they proceed forward. So we ended at that point, and next session they should be traveling. I'm assuming because 4 out of the 5 characters want to travel to Bleakbell and continue following Saxon's little ruse that he's got going on, his little game that he's playing. At least in his mind it's a game, but for the rest of the characters this is just part of what they've got to do in order to get stuff done. So that's that was the gist of this session, or these 2 sessions I should say rather. So hopefully you've enjoyed yourself. Hopefully you come and watch us tomorrow. We play every Wednesday, just about every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And we will see what happens tomorrow. Should be a good time. Thanks again. Hope to see you then. Peace.